In the Western tradition, within esoteric Christianity, this is connected to the Christ or Christic beings, or within the monotheistic traditions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they refer to them as Michaelic beings, because Michael is considered to be the highest of the archangels.
Welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel. My name is Utikazi if you're new, and this video might be a bit overwhelming for a lot of you guys, but if you want to challenge your thinking, this is for you. So without wasting any time, let's get to the video.
But the key thing for the Rosicrucians is that these patterns, everything in the world comes directly from the One, from the mind of God. And then to be able to actually discern the different qualities and functions of things in the manifest world, including things like the different spiritual beings that everyone is connected to all the time, and to become conscious of those and how they affect us, there would be teachings hidden within geometric glyphs. Because again, the geometric glyph holds pure pattern information. It's a packed thought form from the mind of God of a pure pattern. So the tree of life holds a tremendous amount of embedded information. There are 22 paths connecting the 10 spheres on the tree of life. That's an aspect that's within the tree of life that actually shows us the coding pattern of anchors for energy in the human body, for the human consciousness within 3 points of the astral body, for the human life body within 7 points, and then for the human physical body within 12 locations. Just as in Chinese medicine, it's described there are 12 primary meridians. So these numbers are related to functions and the pattern from the mind of God. A huge amount is embedded in these, and different teachers can focus on completely different things from the same pattern, because it's holographic. It's like a jewel, and different facets of all these different things. So if we take a look at what we're looking at tonight, there's another pattern that's laid within the tree of life, which is that it has 3 different pillars inside of it. Now the 3 pillars have an interesting quality to them. On the left and the right hand pillars, which are sometimes referred to in the West as the pillars of mercy and severity, they don't go all the way up or all the way down. The only one that goes all the way up and all the way down is the central, or the middle pillar. And this is related to a very deep teaching of how to discern 3 different types of spiritual forces, or actually 3 different types of spiritual beings in the classical tradition. Now, unfortunately, this idea of discerning 3 different types of spiritual beings was primarily lost over time, so that in most external Western churches today, it's not taught anymore, unfortunately, because it was in the original tradition. And instead, things are presented only as like, there's the good spiritual beings and the bad spiritual beings. Well, the problem is, as we are created from the Godhead, the first movement from the One is into the 2. It's like the first split of the egg in the mother's womb to be the 2 different parts that will then split to become the full manifest human being. So that split into 2 is actually taking the unified aspect of the Godhead, the One, and moving into 2 opposite polarities. In the Indian tradition, they talk about this being Shiva and Shakti, these archetypal yin and yang, masculine and feminine aspects. Now this is absolutely critical, because you can't say that one is good and one is bad. You can't have a purely polarized system and say that's good, that's bad. If we have male and female, which one's good and which one's bad? But this type of thinking infects everything in the Western world today, like our politics. Well, if this side is right, that side must be wrong, sort of thing. Everything is brought into this polarized dichotomy. But the original understanding was much different. If we study classical teachings like in Tibetan Buddhism, they talk about, the path of development is not to one extreme or another. It's the middle way. It's that central path, holding a balance between 2 different extremes. And so the same thing is true on the tree of life. We have a middle path, just like the Tibetans talk about, and then things can go off balance to one extreme or another. Do you want to be too hot or too cold? You don't want either, you want to be in the middle. But this applies to everything within spiritual development. So again, we could talk a lot about this, but I want to give you the direct application of it now as a building block toward the overall concept of Rosicrucian initiation. So one of the things that needs to be discerned with this concept of the Godhead creating the world and the different levels of manifest being that are referred to in the classical text is that there are beings that connect to the middle pillar. They go all the way up and all the way down. That means they connect to the highest levels of the Godhead, and they also connect all the way down to the level of the manifest creation. In the Western tradition, Within esoteric Christianity, this is connected to the Christ or Christic beings, or within the monotheistic traditions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they refer to them as Michaelic beings, because Michael is considered to be the highest of the archangels. And so one of the names that is attributed to the term Michael is that the name Mikael means who is as God. And so that idea that Michael holds the quality of the Godhead, but reduced in scale to where it can be interacted with at an archangelic level. The meaning of this is that when we hold to the middle way, perfect balance in all polarities in life, then we're on the path that takes us all the way. But through free will, through the mysteries that are described in the book of Genesis and in the Kabbalah and many other traditions, where through the exercise of free will, we can choose to go off to one direction or the other and get off balance. The same thing is true for certain types of higher spiritual beings who actually have the spiritual task of being somewhat polarized and pulling us one direction or another. So toward one hand, toward the left-hand pillar, you have spiritual beings that don't understand or really care for the physical world. They're not into that. The physical world is something that seems like a place of suffering. And many of the ancient traditions of the world were heavily influenced by these beings, with teachings of the physical world being an illusion, of the physical world being a place of suffering, get off the cycle of karma and reincarnation, etc. In the Western world, it was understood that these spiritual beings are advanced spiritual beings, more advanced than human beings. And they also have tremendous spiritual light. When one encounters them, one does not encounter a being of darkness. One encounters a being of tremendous light. And so the name given to the leader of this particular spiritual group was Lucifer, and these are Luciferic beings. Now, in most traditions today, this is completely confused because the term Lucifer is completely mixed up with the term Ha-Satan, or Satan, which is a dark being. And so all differentiation is lost. But the Luciferic beings were understood as beings of great spiritual light, but who do not completely understand physical reality or the process of human evolution in the physical world. To them, it seems like we're children being tortured in a place we don't need to be, so get off the cycle and go back to spirit. Again, this is a very deep topic, talking about the consciousness and activities of these beings, and it's made doubly difficult because there's so much baggage attached to the names today that are not part of the original tradition. But that basic idea here is that to one side, you can go, even with any human being, toward a type of spiritual development where you really focus on spirit, but your physical life goes straight to hell. You know, you're not able to pay the bills, and your relationships with people suffer, and you're not taking care of business, and your life's not going that well, but you're really focused on spirit all the time, but not grounded. Now that can also lead, unfortunately, to forms of spirituality that are illusory or hallucinogenic, so that the things that are being perceived and worked with are not really real, or they're distorted through our lens in a particular way that's really not helpful. And so this is connected to what classically is referred to as the Luciferic extreme. Now, on the other hand, as you might imagine, it's the exact opposite polarity. If one is connecting to spirit, but not really following the full process of creation in matter and connecting to that, then the other is going to be deeply connected to matter. It's going to be deeply connected to the process of linking onto the physical materialization process and loving physicality. The first identification of these beings in ancient text was really in the old Persian Zoroastrian tradition. And in the Persian Zoroastrian tradition, they referred to these beings as Ahrimanic or Ahriman. Now, this being of Ahriman or Ahrimanic in the old Persian Zoroastrian text was contrasted to a being that was related to the being of the sun. The name was given as Ahura Mazda. And for the old Persian Zoroastrians, they said that this is the spiritual being that you can spiritually perceive clairvoyantly in the aura of the sun. And this is the same concept we have of the sun god that then later becomes the manifested concept of the solar logos in the later Western tradition. The spiritual being directly related to the sun. So it's opposed by this dark being of materiality. So human beings can fall into this as well by becoming completely materialistic, so that we don't even believe that spirit exists. Spirit is some type of illusion that we have. There's nothing but random evolution over time through completely physical biological processes. And there is no spirit, there's nothing of that kind. And so we can see that type of dichotomy that's being created here and holding the balance between it. between spirituality and life in the world. Now, the Ahrimanic aspect then took on other names and other times. The Gnostics referred to the being of Ahriman, or the beings of the same quality, referred to as Ahrimanic beings, as the demiurge. So you read all these Gnostic texts about the demiurge, the dark lord of this earth that created the physical world. Then in Egypt, this polarity was referred to as Set, and Set was shown contrasted with Horus. And actually there would be an empowerment of the pharaoh by both Horus and Set when the pharaoh would take the throne. That term Set, when the Hebrew people left Egypt, led by Moses, who had been initiated in the Egyptian temples, that term Set became Ha-Satan, and so Set became Satan. Now, Ha-Satan is a Hebrew term meaning the adversary, and so it means that this is a being that has an adversarial relationship to the human being. And so that's where we then got the concept in the West of Satan. Again, this is a dark type of being, very different from the Luciferic beings as beings of light. And so this has to be understood as a basis, number one, to study different esoteric traditions. Because, for example, if you study Theosophy, like the work of Madame Blavatsky, the Luciferic beings are actually the redeemers. Luciferic beings are actually our guides. Then in other texts, like the Rosicrucians, they say, no, the Luciferic beings have some spiritual wisdom, but we have to stay on that middle path. There's a different set of beings here.
Okay, before we continue, yeah, I know this is a lot of information, and I'm not saying it's fact. I thought that this would be a fun video. So yeah, don't go get all defensive, Just go out there and do your own research, okay? Yeah, let's get back to the video.
Now, this idea of holding the balance between these two types of beings is something that plays out in everyday life. And it's a constant dynamic process for every human being. If we were to strip away the veil, we would see that these invisible Luciferic and Ahrimanic beings are influencing our consciousness at all times to go to one direction or the other, just as the beneficial beings are also connecting with us. And in the ancient temple science, it was understood that our connection to these beings was purely through resonance. When we think in a particular manner, when we feel in a particular manner, all of our thoughts, all of our feelings, all of our internal states have an energetic quality to them, and they will resonate like an antenna with qualities of the exact same type in the other worlds. So if we have a very negative materialistic thought, that will resonate us with the more Ahrimanic beings. If we get a type of emotional striving to have only ecstatic process in our life and is completely spiritual without ever having to do the dishes or wash the car, then that will connect us more to the Luciferic types of beings. And then, of course, things that are more of a grounded nature to the central pillar. Now, one illustration I'd like to give of this, of how this same teaching appears in multiple places, is that in the teachings of esoteric Christianity, they have a really remarkable depiction of it. And that is, if you look at any pictures of the crucifixion of Christ from medieval times, they show Christ crucified between two thieves. So there's actually three crosses, and Christ is in the center. And the three crosses are actually three pillars. And there's three different beings on three pillars, with the Christ on the center. And then toward one side, on the pillar toward one side, is a thief that is shown on the paintings as inclining his head toward the Christ. And that's actually connected to the Luciferic beings. And that's demonstrated with that thief basically saying to the second thief that you and I deserve our fate, but this man is blameless. And he asks Christ to take him with him into his Father's kingdom. Christ replies, you will be with me in my Father's kingdom tonight. Because the Luciferic beings are not really opposed to the Christic forces and things in the way that the Ha-Satanic beings, the Ahrimanic beings are. So when you see these medieval depictions, Christ is on the center, one thief is there with his head inclined toward the Christ, and the other thief has his head turned away. And that's the one that is referred to in the Gospel of John as rebuking and reviling the Christ. And because the whole spiritual quality is different here. And that's, again, a direct depiction of three different types of spiritual beings that one interacts with.
Yeah, what do you think? Huh? Yeah, that was a bit different from the videos I react to. But I hope, you can go out there and look these things up for yourself. But yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Have you ever seen any other video similar to this one, or is it your first time? But yeah, thank you for watching if you did watch this far. And yeah, I'll leave down the link to the original channel. You can go check out their content for better understanding. But yeah, I'm not saying everything in this video is fact. I'm just here to react to some videos. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you amazing people in the next video.